Hello, math students, and welcome back to Module 2. It's called Rational Numbers, and this is Lesson 8, Multiplication and Division of Rational Numbers. Our goal for today's lesson is, today we are going to practice the rules for multiplying and dividing rational numbers. And the question that I want you to think about in this lesson is, what model can help you when multiplying or dividing rational numbers? So we have been working a lot with multiplying and dividing integers, and today we're going to see how you can use that same information that you learned about multiplying integers and apply it to rational numbers. You need to remember that a rational number is any number that can be written as a fraction. Okay, so that's how we remember what rational numbers are. Okay, so basically this lesson is very quick and very simple because you just have to remember the same rules that you use for integers. So things to remember are multiplying and dividing have the same rules. The rules are the same for multiplying and dividing rational numbers as they are for integers. And so what we have to take a look at, or what we have to remember, is that we have a positive times a positive equals a positive, a negative times a negative equals a positive, a negative times a positive equals a negative, a positive times a negative equals a negative. And then those same rules that we use for multiplying, we also use for dividing. A positive divided by a positive equals a positive. A negative divided by a negative equals a positive. A negative divided by a positive equals a negative. And a positive divided by a negative equals a negative. And so basically, you are using the exact same rules that we have learned for integers with rational numbers. And then, basically, I would just like to give you a couple of practice problems for you to try. And so we have this little section called practice time. And so we have this problem that says negative 2.5 times 4. So this right here, I would say, would be your number of groups, okay? And this right here, I would say, is your rational number. We're not going to call it an integer because an integer doesn't have a decimal point or a fraction, but we do need to know that it is the identifier of the problem. And so basically what we look at on this one is we say we have a positive, right, times a negative. Okay, because here's our positive, here's our negative. So a positive times a negative. So we look up here where we have positive times a negative, and our answer is going to be negative. So we know that the answer has to be a negative. And then we just take 2.5 times 4. So we have negative 2.5 times 4. And we know that 5 times 4 is 20. Regroup the 2. 4 times 2 is 8 plus 2 is 10. We have one decimal point, and we know that a negative times a positive is a negative, so our answer would be negative 10. And that's how we do that problem, okay? Not difficult at all. You just use the same rules that we used up above for integers, that we apply them to rational numbers, okay? And now we have another one where we're dividing, okay? So again, in this one, this is what we have. Remember, we talked about this in class, what we have, right? And then we're dividing it into 2.5. And so this, again, I would say is your rational number, right? And then you basically follow the rules of division just like in with integers. We have a negative divided by a positive. Okay, so we're going to go look up there at our list. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. So we know the answer on this one is going to be negative. And then you just take negative 10 divided by 2.5. And you know that when you're dividing by a decimal, that you have to have the decimal turn into a whole number. So in order to do that, we multiply both sides by 10. So 2.5 times 10 equals 25. So this is really 25. And then negative 10 times 10 is negative 100. So we're going to make that negative 100. And then we ask ourselves, how many 25-cent pieces are in a dollar, because that's how I always think about 25 and 100. And I say, oh, well, that's easy. That's 4. And so we get 100. And now we have to remember that a negative divided by a positive gives me a negative. So the answer to this problem is -4. Okay? Well, that wasn't difficult either. Okay? So then the last one, I'm actually going to write another one for you because I want you to do one without me. So you're going to have 2 to practice by yourself. You have -5 divided by a -3, -5 times a -3.5. Okay, that's one. And then the other one that I want you to work on is we're going to do a negative, let's do 8.5, -8.5 divided by a -2. Okay, and that's the other problem that I want you to work on. So these 2 you're going to do by yourself to make sure that you can do it without me. All right, so that really wasn't difficult as long as you remember these rules that we have up here. Okay, let's go back. Today we are going to practice the rules for multiplying and dividing rational numbers, which we did because all of these are rational numbers. This is a decimal, this is a decimal, this is a decimal, this is a decimal. We can actually even say these are fractions because this is 8.5, 3.5, 2.5, 2.5. And so we are working with rational numbers. Our question for today's lesson was, what model can help you when multiplying or dividing rational numbers? And the model that I want you to think about on this one is just applying those rules. And these could be considered some models to help you see it. Okay? All right, that's all I have for you today. I'll talk to you soon, kiddos. Bye!